Welcome to the podcast that challenges you from the inside. Come be more and discover the agile within. And now here's your host, Greg Miller.
We are thrilled to announce that the Agile Within podcast is a gold sponsor of Scrum Day. Join us on September 14th, 2023 at Alliant Energy in Madison, Wisconsin for this one-day conference. Prepare to be inspired by remarkable speakers, including the author of A Pocket Guide for Scrum, as well as the authors of Fixing Your Scrum. Get insights from afternoon keynote Dave West, the CEO of Scrum.org. Learn invaluable strategies from industry leaders on implementing Scrum in human resources, technology teams, and beyond. Don't forget to visit us at our booth at Scrum Day. Mark and I will be there, and get your tickets at www.scrumday.org for this incredible event. We look forward to seeing you. Stop by the booth. Mark and I will say hi, and we'll see you then. Okay, welcome to another episode. Mark and Greg here as usual. Today we have a very special guest, our first guest from the island of Singapore. All the way, it's early morning for him there. It's in the evening for us here with the time zone. So thanks for waking up with us. So our guest today is a transformational leadership expert with nearly 3 decades of experience. He's a former naval warship captain, went on to lead and architect leadership transformation and systems level change in the Center for Leadership Development. He is also a Marshall Goldsmith Global Certified Coach and a trained Ericsson Executive Coach. In addition to that, he's also written a book called Navigating the Seas of Change, which was published in 2020. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Karuna Ramanathan. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mark. And really, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an early morning start, but one that has been habituated over the few years. Some of you may have noted that I did some time in the Navy, so it's just a habit that's wake up early, get some exercise, and get to work. So really happy to be here. All good to start.
Yeah, I wish I could do that. I can never get myself to exercise in the morning. I have most energy in the evening, like now. This is my energetic time right now. I'm really energetic, so I'm glad we're syncing up there with our energies. So I wish I could be a morning person. I've tried; it just doesn't work out.
Well, Greg, everyone's beautifully different, and we just learn to adapt.
Yeah, that's true. I could probably make myself, I guess, by doing it, right? I guess, like you said, you got used to it. So I guess I could do it. It's just, it's hard. It's very hard. So today, if you notice by the intro, Karuna is an expert in transformational leadership change. So obviously we in Agile are charged with change, not only with our teams, but with executives, and Karuna has a lot of experience with executives. We're responsible for sometimes leading the change in the organization, pushing out from our teams, working with the executives, the directors, talking with them, helping convince them why Agile is the way to go. And Dr. Karuna has a lot of experience here that he can help us with, and dealing with that, why leaders maybe don't want to change, how we can help them embrace the change. So with that, Dr. Karuna, so Mark and I both are on teams, and we're working with some executives here. Mark, I'm sure you've done the same too, right? You work with executives too.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. What has been some of your experiences that you've had with executives? Good or bad, maybe?
Sorry, you're asking me, Greg?
Yeah, I'm just asking you. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Have you had any positive, negative experiences with executives that you want to share?
Sure. There has to be, at least on some level, it helps a lot to have some sort of, for lack of a better term, I'll just say a relationship, or maybe even a reputation that can precede you, that will help a lot many times. But so I've got a really quick story that I see we talked about this before. He said, be sure and reference him as Karuna, but I see people affectionately also call him Dr. K. So I'm going to share this with Dr. K and get his take on this. And Greg, I may have shared this story on our podcast before.
Okay.
I remember interviewing at a company, and this is when I was a developer and a software developer. And I can remember the gentleman that was interviewing me, who is the vice president over the IT section of the company, asked me how I feel about change and what's the best way to affect change across the organization. And I replied that I feel like change is best had at a gradual pace, so that it's not forced upon people, but so that you can see successes that are achieved at a small level, and then they slowly can get rolled up to a larger level. He listened to my story. And once I was done, he sat up a little taller in his seat, moved a little bit forward in the desk, and said, "Well, thank you for sharing that with me, Mark. But I would like to just share that my experience here at," I'm not going to name the company yet, Company A, my experience is quite the antithesis. And first thing I'm thinking, I was young in my career and thinking, what the heck is an antithesis? And I'm like, I think I know what that means. I think it means the opposite. I'm not sure. But so he told a story that he said he was a contractor and that his company had built a software system for a client. And he was meeting with the clients and the users, and he was trying to find a time where they could be trained. And they were very resistant because they didn't want to learn anything new. They didn't see why, this old system works just fine. Why do we have to move to a new system? And so they kept throwing up these obstacles. Say, well, I've got too many meetings today. I can't do it today. And I've got some deadlines that I need to meet tomorrow. So tomorrow's not good. And he just kept over and over getting these roadblocks. So he finally told them, he said, I understand you're busy people. That's fine. I've cleared my weekends for the next month. So any Saturday and Sunday that you would like to meet to be trained, you just tell me what best suits your schedule, and I'll be happy to come in and train you. You know what? God. Magically, they found time in their schedule to be trained. It's amazing. And so I just had to say, thank you for sharing that with me. I am going to share that story throughout my career, and I am going to learn from that. But I have not employed that before. But that has stuck with me. That change is not always best had on a small term basis. Sometimes you do have to have a call to action and cause change to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was reading here a stat that I wanted to get your take on, Karuna, that 70% of organizational change initiatives fail to achieve their goals. Why do you think that is?
Oh gosh, that's the global. I think it was a McKinsey piece that actually happened in 2016 or 2017 that first actually pointed that out, and I use that stat quite a bit in the work I do with organizations and teams. Because there's one more, guys, that actually is of even greater concern. Deloitte in 2018 put out just before the pandemic another stat that said when the change involves government entities, government type teams, that failure rate is 85% apparently.
Yeah.
So we've all had experiences with this. The question on the table is what really should happen better. And of course, there's, depending on where you read and who you turn to, lots of stuff. But I go by a few key parameters. The first is the strategy in an organization, be it government or even more so corporate, is often the responsibility of the senior leaders. So, and that's the easier part to get to. And we all know that, right? You kind of huddle together. You may get an external consultant. You might actually learn from whatever. You might bring someone else in, and it's done in a couple of months. So in my work with over the last few years, that stuff's out of the way by 6 to 9 months. And a lot of times then following that, senior leaders take a simplistic view to getting that the new things done, and that involves change. And they think that managing change would simply mean getting at a town hall, getting behind a rostrum, getting on a whatever, and saying that this is all important. But that's cognitive. So change is essentially an emotive process for most people. And rhetoric is not going to be enough. So that's the first point that I make. So telling someone what needs to change, why they need to change, what needs to happen better is all great at a meeting table. But once that person leaves the room, it dilutes down to what's in it for me. Where am I going with this? How is this going to threaten me? What the hell? It's an excuse to use the word, but where is this going? I don't. And we all, guys, we come to work for reasons. Most of us works in enablement to something else. So it becomes threatening, and that those anxieties are really real. So that's one major reason why change actually doesn't take off in a way we think it ought to. The second and important pillar here is senior leaders often overestimate their ability to kind of get the change going, and they think that they can drive change. But in order for that to happen, you have to have a seriously hierarchical and visible order in organizations. And most organizations don't have that, except maybe the military, And when you tell people you want something done, I mean, yes, sir, it's going to have to happen down the ranks. Okay, but you don't have that kind of arrangements, thankfully, in organizations.
Yeah.
You have people who are creative. You have people who are curious. You have people who actually come to work seeking fulfillment. They want to have a sense of belonging. To them, inclusion and diversity are important. Being treated right is really, really important. And here we are telling people to do something that's not in their normal repertoire of actions and behaviors. Now, where does this all add up? There is a space that we are currently working with in Singapore, which might be useful for listeners in over at the other side of the world, because we're all essentially the same people with different experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that is execution is not the same as strategy. Now, execution in an organization for change work is largely a responsibility of middle managers, and middle managers need all the help they can to kind of get them going, agile, scrum, the whole lot. These are techniques and mindsets, but really it requires a shift. How do you move from manager to becoming an adaptive team leader? I'll pause here. I think you guys might have spinned off a few things.
That's a question for us. How do we move from?
No, that's a question that I deal with here with my teams in the consulting work we do and the coaching work we do with transforming organizations. How do we move the middle manager to becoming a more confident, adaptive team leader, so that he or she can be more confident, thinking a little differently when the situation warrants it, relating to others a little differently when the mix of people is not necessarily convenient, and of course feeling a little different when actually you really don't know what to do, and it can be a really frightening proposition not knowing what to do.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm working with a director right now, and you were talking about from moving from execution to strategy, and I was working with him, and I realized I'm down here in the weeds. I'm executing, right? I'm doing the tasks, and as you would say, and he was telling me like, he was getting frustrated with all the minutia and all the details that I was talking with, and I was like, I'm like, oh, he's a strategy person. He's used to seeing a few levels up from me, planning and all this stuff, and down to the details. He's not used to being an execution person. I don't know if, I'm sure he's seen it before, but he's not. Do you come across a lot of leaders like that? Like they're so far up, like you said, they strategize and they can't really emphasize with the execution piece of it.
I say they can't empathize with it more because there's just too much control in organizations. I mean, management is essentially control. And we we beat that up quite often in terms of, if you've gone to LinkedIn and all that, you'll see all kinds of people saying you need to have vulnerability, you need to have authenticity. Yeah, all that aside, people became successful in those positions of power because they're really good at what they do. They're educated for it. They have shown results to get there. They are dependable. They deliver, and so therefore the gut word here is control. The better you are controlling things, the more likely you will be successful. And that is now almost paradoxical in the kind of change work we are seeing at a frightening pace. And so they're so far from it. You're spot on, mate. But really, I think it's this simplistic view of I can control things because let me give you a story. So I was week we were with a group of very interesting senior leaders doing some transformation work in an organization in Singapore, and the senior leader, who's actually very well respected, comes in and said, we are very good at what we do. I say, yeah, you are. I mean, really, you are. The results show from day to day you are. But his bosses feel and his peers feel that he's one of the more resistant senior leaders to change because go away, I don't need all this. I'm doing my work really well right now. But then again, say whatever change you want, I can get my people to do it. And so I asked, how many people do you have with you? How many teams do you have with you? What's the total, the total number of people? And he said, well, about 300. And I said, good, 300. Wow, that must keep you really busy. He said, but no problems. We know our work. And I said, how's this change work going to go for you? He says, well, we need to make some changes. I say, who's we? I mean, this is talking. Who's we? He said, we as in the organization. Who is the organization? 300 people are the organization. And then I asked him this question. And this is a story back for you, Mark, especially because you're so kind to share that story. Let me get you one back. I said, when was the last time you actually went away on vacation? And he said this, just quite recently. And I said, well, how long a time did you take on your vacation? And you must have enjoyed it. He said, 4 days. And I said, 4 days? And I said, no. I said, dear senior leader, can you share with us, when was the last time you actually went on a long vacation? I mean, in the context of Singapore, it's about 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I know in some parts of the world, it's 6 to 8 weeks,
Right.
But 2 to 3 weeks, he said, oh, that was about 10 years ago before I joined this organization. There you go. There are good people. They just oversimplify things, and underlying that is this developed need for control, and that comes with that gives rise to a lot of issues down the line, guys. Am I making sense?
Yes, you are. Oh yeah,
for sure.
It's totally control because we have, yeah. So we're a lot of our teams come out of. I think I was sharing with you earlier. Come out of waterfall, right? Waterfall software projects into agile, where it's the project manager command and control in waterfall, and then agile is complete opposite. It's collaboration, it's autonomy for the team makes decisions, and absolutely I can totally equate or understand that, and I'm sure Mark can too, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna say that was a great story. From my point of view, I'm actually in a really good spot right now with my current company. Senior management truly does understand. One of the big parts, Greg, that you and I have in our role is that when these changes, like big sweeping changes, like, okay, we want the teams to focus on this, and we want this done by a certain date, let's say, if it's a date-driven perspective, is to just let the management team know, okay, you're saying you want the teams to focus on this. That means we're going to have to put this other work on the shelf in order to meet these timeframes that you're putting forth. And we have some other work that probably is going to come up that we can't plan for right now, but we know it's going to be a problem. So how would you like for us to deal with that? Because it's coming, whether we want to or not. We just need to decide how we are going to deal with it. So in Scrum, for instance, focus is one of the values of Scrum, and just making things transparent. And so, Greg, you and I would be greatly aligned on this. It's just making sure that the goals are transparent to everyone, because I can't tell you how many projects, I'm giving air quotes again, Greg. We got to do something about that. I can't give air quotes on a podcast, but
no, you can't.
When you have projects, and how many times one person assumes that the date is, let's just say, January 1st. Some other team heard that, oh, well, it's really not until March 23rd. And then somebody else on the team, oh, well, yeah, I heard the VP talking. He was probably talking like in the fall, sometime like this. So everybody has these dates flowing around, but nobody has the definitive word, or the definitive, I guess they don't get the definitive word on when. So just making things very transparent, making things clear, and so that expectations of when decisions are made, all the parties, including the executive team, understand what making those decisions really mean.
Just so spot on, actually, I'm just taking down some pointers for this, Mark, because actually at the end of the day, research time and time again indicates how when people co-create together and they can communicate together and sit down and work things out together, you can call it agile Scrum. There's so many other approaches as well. Yeah, the whole idea here is to move away. And when you said waterfall to agile, the waterfall methodology is etched in the work group traditions. So basically, when we get employed, at least in Singapore, and I'm pretty sure it is that way as well in the US, you said, well, here's a job. These are the descriptions. The job descriptions would have been worked out with, say, a HR entity for a typical organization, and say, let's go out and put the ad out there. And then someone responds, you and I respond to an ad, and then we come back and we say, hey, you know what? Let me apply for this. Well, here's my resume. And then you get called to interview. This is a traditional process, right? So when you call the process, the interviewer would probably say, do you know what this job requires? And then you say, yeah, the requirements of the job is in that job description. And so I start with this mental model that this is what's expected of me. And I ask some questions around that to clarify some stuff. And when I then join, I said, this is what's expected of me. And the manager says, yes, this is what's expected of you. And it's waterfalling. And it's like, waterfalls, right? The water just falls on. If you're going to get a whole, you're going to get all wet and messy.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's waterfall. And then we start asking, what are the assumptions behind this waterfall method? It works really well in hierarchical bureaucratic organizations where things are very simple, obvious, and very clear, visible to people. You call that processes, protocols, IT systems, whatever the case might be. And most people are really comfortable in those kinds of settings. And let's not blame them. I'm quirky as well when I can't park my car in the usual parking lot. I share this with my client. I'm going to a client's place now, and I know I'll be there at 10 o'clock, and I'm not going to get my usual parking lot. I'll just get a little nervous and upset. And then I might be anxious because at the end of a long day at 6 p.m, I might not remember where the car's parked. It might just
right.
So the point here is this way of working, this traditional way of working, is not wrong. It's problematic when the change demands, the environment, the uncertainties, the complexities, the ambiguities build up. Now, how do we then move that manager who believes that his or her job is to manage work and by default manage people to a role that is far wider than that job description? And in that role, is he or she, I just want to be gender neutral here, he or she, both of the manager is a influencer. The manager is someone who actually leads that co-creation. builds that collective ownership, strengthens the communication. Now, does that mean that this person needs to go to a leadership development program? Yeah, maybe. I mean, there are some options out there. But the larger part of this is the sensibility and awareness that you can't simply be dishing out work, but you need to work with people around work. And that's a major shift for many middle managers. I'll pause here, guys.
Yes, totally, absolutely. We've been talking about, we've been all telling stories, and I'm curious about, if I can slide in here a little bit. You talk about, you've created the 251 storytelling model for leaders in your book, Navigating the Seas of Change. And I want to touch on that. If you can touch on that, I find that very interesting. And you emphasize the importance of storytelling and building strong teams. How can we go about doing that?
Thank you for bringing that up. I sometimes forget that we have done all this work over the years. I mean, I'm at this for 4 decades. It's been a real privilege.
Oh, wow.
Working with people. So, I spent 19 years in the Navy, and then I moved on. I was in 2 ship commands. I get asked about that quite often, actually, and I just tell them all the mistakes I made. But when I got into the leadership center, I started working with unique groups of people. And one of the big problems we have, as with any military, deep, visibly hierarchical, very orderly, and you're trying. And the question on the table was, how do you accelerate learning? And that was not easy, because you have a lot of dynamics in the room, and people are fearful. I mean, Amy Anderson talks about psychological safety. Gosh. I would like to see her test that. I mean, no disrespect to her out of Harvard. I would like to see her test that in the military,
Yeah.
I mean, the military is psychological and it is safe. But
they don't go together, right? Yeah.
They don't go together. So let's coming back to the story. I did some work with a small team of consultants in 2008, and one of the big problem we had was to get a young midshipman. Midshipman is a term we use for the first year of training before the person becomes a qualified naval officer. So we watched these midshipmen going about their training on the ship. And when it came to the evening in a learning session, this person was asked to share his reflection, a young man, 20 years old, 21 years old. And he stands up and holds up a flip folder, and he starts reading what he did the whole day. And about 3 minutes into it, I say, wait a minute, if you don't mind me. How did you actually feel about today? So started to facilitate that, right? And he magically, he just paused, froze, and he put the paper down and he said, I felt scared. And it's obvious, because the ship was rolling somewhat, we're middle of the seas, and we're just proceeding to another port. And I said, scared about what? And he said, I was very concerned about, and he went on to explain what he was really concerned about, and to do some things. And he was, and I said, then how did you feel through those steps? And he said, at some point I got pissed off. And I said, yeah, because I felt that I did not have enough knowledge to actually get through this. Where is the knowledge? Not in the books. No one's telling it to me. I made to go find that out. And then he said something happened. And he went on to recite what happened. And he said, by the evening, it dawned on me that actually there were only possibly 2 steps to this, 1 and 2. And at supper, which is the dinner call on ships, I checked in with a ship crew, and he said, yeah, it's as straightforward as that. Don't think too hard about this. And so I'm now actually in a good place. Now, guys, he went through 5 emotions. So what did I do? I said, So the next time you want to build a story, start telling yourself, who am I? I mean, so my name is Karuna. So let's just put myself in the midshipman's shoes. My name is Karuna. I want to share with you what I went through today. That's the two. The first is introduce myself, and the second is set the context for the story. This took place on 2008, in 2008 on board a warship out in the South China Sea. So that's the 1 and 2, guys. The 5 is actually the use of the hand to remind ourselves that there are 5 natural, though often subdued emotions in many of us, leaders and managers, team leaders. The first is the little finger. The little finger is the one that is probably the most vulnerable. If you had the misfortune of getting your hand hurt, the little finger will take the time to heal. It's probably going to take a long time to heal. It could be crushed. I mean, what a terrible imagery, but that's the way it probably work. The little finger is my fear finger, which means I start my story from a place of opening up with fear. What was I most anxious about? What did I fear most? What was I frightened about? So the young midshipman said, I felt scared. I mean, it's as simple as that. Scared about what? So I felt scared when I realized that I was given this task and I didn't really know what I was. Okay, what were your concerns? That's the concern is the ring finger, the relationship finger, where you actually will worry a little bit. Is where we put our rings on, if we actually decide to settle down. Then the middle finger segues into reminding us there's always something that frustrates us, piss me off, That's the middle finger. And the next finger, which is the index finger, the next one is the lessons learned finger. So when I reflect, it's a reflective finger. When I reflect, I actually, I put my finger to my forehead. What did I gain today? What did I learn today? And then I'm a believer in positive psychology. So basically the thumbs up, it's not a thumbs down, it's a thumbs up. That says that I'm really happy that I picked this up today and I'm going to pack this away and remember this lesson that I made. So the 251, the 2 is simply an introduction. There's actually a paper on it. The 1 is a conclusion because storytelling techniques all point to the need to kind of land or summarize on a major message or the theme. So the message in my story is, even as we become we can find people around us. Let's take that 2000 who can actually help us and verify if we just manage to look around instead of just looking at the task. So that's the 251, guys. Now, it was great because there's a story behind the 251.
Okay.
So having done this in 2008, I was at a KM knowledge management conference in San Jose, actually, and I signed up for a little evening session with Nancy Dixon. She's quite well known in the circles. Really, really great mentor. And Nancy was actually kind of facilitating this after dinner session. Now, of course, Karuna was still in the Navy with all the military traditions. He got out and instead of getting a sandwich, he had a sandwich and 2 beers, right? So I find myself rushing back to the session, but I pumped 2 beers, right? And when I got into the session, there was this around the room discussion around what would be a unique knowledge creation technique. And when it came to me, I was near loss for words, and I started using the fingers to explain the 251. She picked it up. Someone else in the room picked it up. Next thing you know, it's all published and the model is launched.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's great.
No, it's just purely accidental as well, right? I mean, we developed it. And then someone wrote about it and someone published it. And you know what? In 2013, I had a request from UNICEF to actually use it in the UN frame action review. So really, I mean, it's a free to use. It's the world needs to be a better place for all of us to share how we feel about some things, and that's really where the start point comes.
That is wonderful. Yeah, that's Mark. That kind of as I was listening, I was thinking. You said transparency and. Like I was thinking a lot of the values, like you were talking about the midshipman, and I think it took courage for him to say that he was scared
For sure.
Yeah, I can relate that to Scrum values totally.
To Scrum and Agile colleagues, I would say just go for use the little finger story. I mean, the little finger is actually, so what scares you? What scares me? What am I most anxious about? And that's inherent in all of us. And it's actually in the work they've done over the years with sense making and work helping teams through complexity and growing uncertainty. What you have to acknowledge that fear, because most of us prefer to be in ordered space. We don't like to be in unordered, disordered spaces. We are all like that. We have routines. We have to-do lists. We have plans. We have. You write a will. You have investments. That's how we're programmed. But actually, the fears are what keeps us a little down at work. I often, I'm 59, and so I think about life, and I at this stage, I think the fears are what keeps me going in a family. It's completely the opposite. So, I don't like the word vulnerability because it connotes different things to different people. But if you ask them, what are you scared about? What are we scared about? What should we be scared about? Is a great start to a difficult project.
Yeah, it takes me. So I finished training from the back of the room. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Karuna. Greg and I think we've talked about it. It's really big among trainers. It goes into brain science and really how we as humans, how we learn. And what the little finger really reminds me of is one of the principles that is taught in training from the back of the room is that there's a rational side of the brain. There's also an emotional side of the brain. Unless you exercise both sides of that, your learning is not going to be as high as it can be. And to your point, if I remember correctly, pain is the number one trigger on the emotional side for learning that casts the highest retention, I guess, or comprehension. But when we're training, we don't necessarily like to inflict pain upon our trainees, right? So that the next best thing is just to have some positive emotion, some storytelling perhaps, or just have different techniques in hand that evoke emotion to really hit both sides of our brain. So that lines up perfectly with that training course.
Yeah, it's you guys are spot on, man. As consultants, I want to say two things. One is I was working with a dear friend and associate. He's Australian, Arthur Shelley. In fact, he might be someone you might want to talk to as well on this, because Arthur's a really, really learning consultant. I can link you guys up. But what he said last week when we had a session with clients is he said, we were asked the question, how do you deal with mindset? He said, let's get to mind flex. And I thought that was a really easy way to see it. So the mindset's not bad. It's not a bad problem, but it should expand, however, to mind flex. So how do you flex your mind? And that goes back, Mark, to actually, what you said about, getting to both sides of the brain. And it's a really, really important thing. Now, the second thing I want to say is I actually have a 65 manager, 60 managers getting in a room for a whole day. And we're doing exactly that, training from the back of the room. We're borrowing to say that, and I'm interestingly, I'm actually meeting the HR coordinator this afternoon. I can imagine the question that's going to come. What is the program going to be like? What are you going to be saying and designing? What are you going to do? And I'm going to say, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? And I'm actually kinesthetically going to walk from the back of the room. I'm not going to be standing in front of the stage, and there'll be no PowerPoint slides this time. And let's just see how it goes, Yeah.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. So do you find, we were talking about fear, like when in your work with executives and folks at that level, if they're open enough with you, do you find like when they're going through transformations, are they kind of, when they tend to resist, do you find that some of them were actually afraid?
I make the assumption that everyone's afraid. I'm actually very. We have a team of associates, so I'm just going to use the word we. We actually notice we try in the first mile. We try to look for people who are not afraid. These are people who are over talking, who are over driving. It's a lot of noise generated in the room. Excessively positive, we believe that the ordinary and interested person is going to quieten down and start fearing and becoming anxious. That's our state. So there's a small number say, yeah, let's do this. This is so important. And I say, wait. Let's just put a marker on that, because somehow in our years of experience, this is probably the person who's not going to get it going. A lot of that kind of we call it drama that starts in our work with executives, but we run and so over the years we have, and we are known in the region for this. I mean, we happily just got picked up for being one of the top 10 OD groups in Asia by an independent magazine. So we got picked. We run 2 programs. If the organization is in the first mile of change, we run a change leadership program around those very projects. So we actually have the organization saying, here are 20 managers, and these managers are going to be working on 10 projects in pairs. And how do you get these projects going? We actually team coach these projects for 6 months, and our success rate is quite high. It's about 75 to 80%. And we're proud of it, because here's McKinsey saying 70% of fail, and we say that no, we give you back the 70% in a positive, but it does take a bit of work. And to go to your question, yes, a lot of that is in dealing with fears and unknowns, and trying to construct the exploratory probes into difficult situations. And now more than ever, Mark and Greg, working with data and sense making and all that stuff, it's really, really important work. But the other program that we are actually increasingly known for is this is the middle mile of transformation. So you have these projects, they've started for a year and a half, and they're now finding their way into the usual BAU functional stuff, And so the question then becomes, how do ordinary middle managers deal with new ways of doing things? And the answer to that is the start state is also fear. You are going to compromise what I have perfected for the last 10 to 15 years, and I'm not about to allow myself to be unfrozen, to open up, to do all that stuff. So we actually run an adaptive leaders program, adaptive managers program. And that takes about 6 to 8 months as well, to allow for people to gradually shift, as a gradual pace. Don't impose it on people as Cotter said, people just hate being told that they have to change. But we curate the small steps with them. And what's beautiful about that program is you could have, like, I'm just finishing one next week, 40 managers on the program, guys, and you are literally looking at 40 different leadership programs, because they're all very different. They are different personalities, and they have different projects, they have different experiences, they have different quirks, they have different knowledge bases. Just amazing to see the beautiful differences in people and celebrate that, instead of constructing them as problem makers in the center of an organization. So that's where we are. Fear is the most important realization in change work, and accepting that with some sense of respect and empathy in people is a really good start to getting this kind of work going.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I was just curious as to what you were experiencing from them, because a lot of times when we deal with executives, we don't, even ones that are receptive to change, my experience is they'll only open up so far. And I was just curious if there's fear behind that, or that they have to put on this front that they're, change is good and we're all for it and rah rah sometimes, and yeah.
No, Change is not good. My wife tells me I should eat less of this and more of that. And I said,
Nah, not good. Yeah, that's right. I know. Why do things have to change, right? Yeah. Why do things have to change so much? Yeah. Change is good though, right? I mean, do you think so? Change is good though, right? Overall, I mean, the world changes all the time. We can't stop it, right? But
I think
yeah, go ahead.
More realistic view of it, I think change is real, which is gosh, you know what? I can't afford not to change.
You fought not to change. Yeah.
I cannot afford not to change.
I can't afford not to change. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So why do we fight and resist it and kick it so much? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, totally. Well, Mark, we're about out of time, I think, right?
Just hit the 1 minute mark.
Just hit the 1 minute mark. Yes. So any final thoughts, Mark, on anything that you have for Karuna?
So I'm just going to say what was on the top of my mind. Just thinking about in my past, some leaders being resistant to change. And maybe we should ask Dr. Karuna back again, because there's another thing of, there are some leaders that really keep information close to the chest and don't share information because information is power. And I mean, who are we kidding? Sometimes holding on to that power allows you to ascend within an organization. It's a very selfish play, but nonetheless, some people are able to ascend in the company because they do possess knowledge. Was going through my mind as we were talking through this is it's probably a larger thing about change and being open. Bruno doesn't like the word vulnerable, but just being open and transparent with information. So anyway, maybe that's a teaser for a future episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Well, Dr. Karuna, thank you so much for being our guest today. We definitely appreciate you taking time out. I know, wish you good luck today at your 10 o'clock appointment, right? Hope that goes well. Once again, this has been Greg and Mark and Dr. Karuna. Dr. Karuna has a book, Navigating the Seas of Change. Be sure to check that out. We'll leave a link to that in the show notes. We'll leave a link for to reach out to Dr. Karuna on LinkedIn. Any other ways folks can reach you, Karuna?
Totally. I mean, just drop me an email if you have a question. It's karuna@krk.sg. karuna@krk.sg, and I'll be happy to get back to you. I mean,
okay.
If you're willing to change, I'll help you. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Yep. Reach out to him with any questions that you have. Again, he's an organizational executive change management expert. And if you want to reach out to Mark and I, again, you can contact us via LinkedIn. We both have our personal pages out there. We have the Agile Within page. We're also on Twitter at the Agile Within. And we are also have my email, gregmiller@theagilewithin.com. You can reach out to me with comments, suggestions, what you like, what you don't like about the show, what you want to see. Do you want Dr. Karuna back? We do. We definitely want Dr. Karuna back. So another great episode here. Thank you for joining us. This has been Greg and Mark with the Agile Within, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much, Greg and Mark.
Yeah.